the history of economics, whenever we've had a bubble, an asset bubble, whatever type it may be, a lot of the time it's been driven by liquidity. There's a famous economist called Kindleberger who talks about panics, manias and crashes. And he says that, liquidity is the prime source of all bubbles. And when that liquidity dries up, that's when you see the bubble crash. But at the height of bubbles, people are always euphoric. And you see people kind of talking the story up a lot. They really do believe it. And it's known as confirmation bias. People almost have to confirm to themselves that, we're doing something right, or we're investing for the right reasons. But when that confirmation becomes kind of pervasive, that's when you should get a bit worried, because that's when euphoria is in a market. So when you do see that, I just recommend that people become a little bit kind of wary of what's going on. As I said, maybe read Keynes. He's a great economist. Read Kindleberger. You might learn, they give you a different insight to how markets work, and I think it will be useful in the current climate. I hope maybe some of those ideas will be useful, but I just want to invite other people as well to maybe contribute anything that they may wish to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's a useful contribution, and I'm sure the head of the Economic Upliftment Committee has noted your name down somewhere on his list if you're living in Dubai for a longer period. Rizwan, you want to share something about your experience on the capital and bond markets? And I had warned you. This may be slightly on the upside, or maybe. And then we'll see if there are any final questions before I give to Mukhtar Bhai to share he's got some thoughts to share with us as well.
Just a quick background. What generally, when people talk about the bond market, I think it's important to mention here, it's not the treasury bills that retail investors such as you and I would purchase. This is basically banks borrowing money from banks by issuing bonds, or the more recent flavor of the month or for the year being the sukuk, the Islamic compliant bond issuances, which obviously require an underlying asset to have the cash flow. I will not bore you with all the structuring details. But I think the important thing is that the reason currently, a lot has been said about the crisis with regard to confidence or lack of confidence between banks lending to each other, has primarily been driven by the fact that there is no confidence between banks. And I think the key example has been perhaps the investment banks, particularly banks that used to, again, the example being the securitization where mortgages were bought and sold. I think a very simple example here would be Northern Rock, for instance, gives you an individual a mortgage for a 25-year period. But Mr. Y is on the card saying, even I want a mortgage, but there's a finite amount of cash available to Northern Rock. So what it does, it wraps that mortgage that it already has into a bond, numerous of those, sells it off, gets the cash, and grows its business, so on and so forth. And then you have the subprime where they are defaulters, property prices fall, and obviously the banks are left with assets that do not materialize. What has generally happened is that the effect of all this is that the Goldman Sachs, the Morgan Stanley, the bulge bracket investment banks are no longer investment banks. They are retail banks as well, simply because they need to tap into the deposit market. They need the cash that you and I have, and there are stories particularly coming out of Africa that people have withdrawn cash and put, like the olden times, under their mattresses. They require the cash deposit from us so that they can continue funding, because the interbank lending has dried up. Examples, and Ali Abbas is here, and Mukhtar Bhai will probably vouch as well, the bond market. Something, a quasi-sovereign like Taka is selling at 950 basis points. It's ridiculous. Dubai holding at 1,000 as of Tuesday last week. These are huge spreads that are perhaps questioning the situation that is there confidence between the banks? And the important thing, and I was speaking to Mohsin earlier on, and I was saying, it is very important that we focus on where the issue lies. The issue lies that banks are not comfortable lending to fellow banks. And as long as that comfort and that confidence isn't there, that confidence and comfort isn't going to trickle down to us small, medium enterprise businesses that want to borrow. So as long as that interbank confidence of lending to each other is triggered and is restored, that trickle effect will trickle down to retail borrowers such as ourselves. Again, there's a lot of talk about non-deposit banks. The example of drawing from Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, again, is the Tamwil and Amlak merger discussion. Rightly or wrongly, I think there is a lack of capitalization there. And, they're not deposit-taking banks. They are in the business of lending money. But they're in the business of lending money. They need to borrow money from somewhere to be able to continue lending for mortgage buyers. So maybe there is a lot of adjustment that's going to take place. So yes, there are some impacts that are going to take place on the real estate front here, mortgages being one as an example. But I think I may put this in the cat amongst the pigeon. The U.S. subprime started from securitization. Subprime securitizations, bond issuances of residential or commercial mortgage-backed securitizations. I think the solution lies there as well.
There is a question at the back, if I can get the mic out there, please.
Assalamu alaikum. I don't know. I don't want people to misread the question or the thoughts I have in my mind. It's all very well to describe the theories of various economists. The real question is that are we forgetting the fundamentals? I mean, I would like to cast our memories back to 1979 when Ayatollah Khomeini invited Gorbachev and Reagan to consider their position, to attend to Islamic philosophy of economy. I think Gorbachev realized it very rapidly and he was ousted. And in current times we see that capitalism is not quite working. That's number one. Number two, I'm not sure what is the economy here. Personally, I think Abu Dhabi, or Bank of Abu Dhabi, or petrodollar, is trying to rescue the world. I hear that instead of bailing out Dubai, it's going to buy out Dubai. And Nakhil is in the negotiations. Perhaps the panel can confirm.
I don't think any of us on the panel can confirm the speculation. And that speculation will continue. I think to your other point, and I do think you do make an important point, I think one of the real experiences to learn out of this crisis is what happens when the financial economy dislocates from the real economy. One of the tenets of Islam is that you effectively do not structure finance against other than a real asset. So something has to be tangible. You can't create an asset out of something synthetic, another financial instrument. And I think those tenets, certainly in the Islamic world, are very well understood. It's not a surprise that the Islamic banks have not been affected in the same way by this financial crisis as their conventional counterparts. That's an important learning experience. The models that were applied, in your reference to Gorbachev and Reagan, true. But actually, the truth of the global economy is you can keep trying different models in different places. The judgment of any economic model and its success is, does it create wealth? Is that wealth used in a productive way? Does it improve standards of life? And actually, humans have been experimenting with that for many, many decades and will continue, because actually no system is perfect. Every system eventually fails. We've just been through, before this crisis,